Welcome listeners to 2021 and episode 32 of the Running Guide podcast, where I aim to provide informative content and interviews with elite athletes and health professionals from around the world, like in today's episode, where I'm chatting to an Aussie runner from the Gong, who towards the end of 2019 ran a 68.45 for the half and a 226.47 for the full, and has set the goal to break the 220 benchmark for the marathon distance, whilst providing the running community written articles and interviews with elite athletes via the online format under the business name of RunCreature. Welcome to the Running Guide podcast, Myles Gough.
Hi, Aston.
How you going, Myles?
Yeah, great, mate. Thanks for having me on the program.
No, it's great to have you on, mate. We've really been looking forward to this. Been training today?
Not today, actually. So I've got a 3K race tonight, this evening. It's Saturday, the 16th of January today. So there's the Illawarra Track Challenge today, which is happening at the Karen McCann Athletic Center here in Wollongong. And they got a whole slew of races, a lot of sprints going on, and then a 3K in the evening. So I'll be hopping into that 3,000 meter race on the track, and hoping to have a pretty good hit out. So no jogs this morning. I'll do a little warm up before that this evening, and then try to run a fast one.
Yeah, okay. So a bit of an accent there, mate. Tell me about that.
Yes, indeed. So I am Australian. I have my Australian citizenship, Aston. I've been here since about 2009, but I actually grew up in Canada. So I was born and raised in Toronto, and grew up there. Went to university in Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada, a little bit similar to Canberra, I guess, in that regard. And that's where I met my now wife, who is Australian. So I came back here following her after I finished my first uni degree, and the rest is history.
Yeah. All these foreign boys grabbing hold of these Aussie girls, hey?
Her parents warned her when she did an exchange year not to fall in love with a Canadian, so she obviously didn't listen to them.
Yeah. So how you finding Oz? You loving it?
Absolutely love Australia, mate. It's home now for sure. I mean, I've been here, going on 11 years, and love the climate. It agrees with me very much so. Love the people. Love just everything about living here. It's been fantastic, and wouldn't trade it for anything.
Sure. And always in Wollongong?
No, so when I first came out here, we were in Sydney. So we spent probably 6 years in Sydney, sort of moving around the inner west and eastern suburbs of Sydney, and then did a short stint in Canberra. I head down to Canberra quite regularly because my wife's family are all down there, so all my in-laws. So we come down quite a bit. So we were there for about 6-8 months. We lived there. Both took sort of short-term contracts there. And then we got work in Wollongong. So we came here probably 2016. We moved to Wollongong.
Okay. And the COVID thing hasn't been too bad down there, has it? I mean, Canberra, we've been the golden state, I call it. We've hardly been untouched. We've been so good, but hasn't been that much worse in the Gong, has it?
In terms of are you talking about in terms of
restrictions and that? Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit around Christmas time with that thing that happened out the northern beaches, and I know the Central Coast and the Wollongong Shire, there was a few restrictions there. That's mainly been lifted now, or?
Yeah, so I think there were a couple of cases that sort of popped up around Christmas time, and look, everyone was really good here in the local community. I think as soon as that sort of that news popped up, people went and got tested en masse and did the right thing, and for the most part, I think it was kept pretty much in check. And look, going around now in town, you're seeing everyone wear their masks and everything, especially if they're indoors or going shopping. But otherwise, I mean, we've been relatively unscathed through coronavirus. Touch wood. I mean, it's been there've been I guess periods where you want to be precautious, but it feels pretty normal, and we're feeling pretty safe at the moment. So hopefully that continues.
And how do you earn a bob down there in Wollongong? What do you do for work?
So right now I'm sort of working as a freelance writer, and obviously doing RunCreature, which is sort of doing some journalistic work, telling stories about runners and athletes. Previously, I was in media and communications, so I used to work in communications in higher education. So I worked for a university for several years, did some writing for magazines and some freelance writing, and I'm also a high school teacher. So I was teaching high school English in 2018 and 2019, and it took a break from that. Was doing some casual work, and then sort of COVID struck, and sort of I've been sort of trying to figure out what the next step is. When we sort of when all this clears up.
Sure. Now, I've only got times here on the World Athletics, they call themselves now. So up 2019, 2020, they're pretty handy times we'll talk about soon. But obviously, you've got a bit of running history before that back home in Canada. So let's talk about that, how you got involved in running, how long you've been running for.
It's not a huge history. It's not as big a
Okay.
history as you'd probably think, Aston. So it is relatively new. I mean, I was always a sporty guy, so I always played, heaps of sport growing up. I was very, very big into my ice hockey when I was a kid, obviously growing up in Canada. So did a lot of team sports, played ice hockey in the winter, then baseball and soccer in the summer, and ran a bit of track and field and ran cross country in school, but then sort of went on a big hiatus from running. I mean, I liked it, but I was never into it seriously. Never sort of did like little athletics. It was all just school organized meets and stuff. And then look, it probably took coming out here, and really, if I'm being honest, it took moving to Wollongong and sort of getting involved in park run probably around 2016, early 2017, before I started sort of running seriously or semi-seriously, I guess. And yeah, so it's not an extensive history. It's relatively new in terms of my life and devoting all the hours that I devote to it now. But yeah, I'm loving it, and it's a huge part of my life now. Both training personally, but also just sort of trying to tell these stories through RunCreature and talk to athletes and learn from athletes and do very much what you're doing, right? Pick the brains of people who are out there doing incredible things in the sport.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so just for a bit of reference for the listeners, like Park Run 5K, where were you running when you first started doing those? What sort of
Yes,
times?
it took a lot of hounding from my wife before I actually finally caved and went to Park Run too.
Sure.
She'd bit the bullet and went with a girlfriend a few times, and she kept coming home. She said, "You'll love it, you'll love it." And I said, "No, it's the last thing I want to do. Get up early on a Saturday and go run 5K. Like that just seems like torture and punishment and all the rest." And then finally I caved. I mean, we were new in town. We hadn't met too many people, so it was a good way to go out and sort of get to know some people. And yeah, went up to the Bulleye Sand and Point Parkrun, which is absolutely beautiful. If you haven't run it, if anyone's sort of down Illawarra way, make sure you get up to the Sand and Point Parkrun because it's an absolutely stunning course. But first time around, I think it was early 2017, and I would have ran about 19 and a half minutes.
Okay, yep.
And I remember being just amazed, Aston. I remember being amazed at all the people with all their watches. It sounds naive, but I really had no idea that people ran with running watches. Like that was just like this new thing to me. And I was like, oh, all these people on the start line. And then I remember just like how quick some people were running and just it seemed effortless. And I mean, I ran 19 and a half minutes, but I was super puffed and exhausted at the end of it. But I was also pretty exhilarated. And I sort of remembered finishing thinking, okay, I get why this is kind of fun. And I want to come back next week and just try and improve. And sort of the rest is history. Just it became a part of the weekly routine.
Excellent. All right, let's talk about some of these times. Starting with the 3000 Sydney, November 21, you've ran a 8:32.66. So that's a big improvement from just a sub 20 for the park run. So let's talk about that race, 8:32.66 for the 3000 meters.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we're talking relatively recently. So that was the 3K champs just a couple of months ago. So obviously it made, quite a fair bit of progress over the last 3 years, I guess. Initially just sort of training with myself, but then also have been working with a coach here in Wollongong. I got a fellow named Barry Keane, who's an excellent runner. He's an ultra runner, and he used to be a marathoner and is a solid athlete. And I just have a good group of guys as well that we sort of train with locally. We push each other and sort of do some workouts together and long runs on Sunday. So it's been really helpful to have that group. But yeah, the 3,000 meters. So that was up in Sydney. It was an excellent day for running. I was in the C race, which just tells you the sort of class and depth of talent that was competing on that day. But I had it was a pretty good, strong field in that C race. I was running for the first 2 kilometers behind Scotty Westcott, who's a former Olympic marathoner. So that is always helpful to sort of be able to just sort of trail and draft behind a marathoner who's competed at the Olympics.
Sure.
So yeah, it was, it's a tough distance in as much as you're just walking, you're right on that red line the whole way basically. And
you're wearing spikes?
I was wearing spikes, which was pretty new. I think I'd only worn spikes in a couple of track races before that. So that was pretty new, but yeah, had the spikes on. So I guess that makes it official. And Yeah, it was a perfect night for racing, just like
Mm.
perfect conditions. It was up at Sydney Olympic Park on the warm-up track, and it was a fantastic event.
Now, earlier in the year, this is January, the start of 2020, you ran 15:05 up there in Sydney for the 5,000 metres.
Yeah. So about, I guess almost a calendar year before in
Mm.
January.
Mm.
Um, that was the state, I believe it was the state 5K champs. And again, sort of in one of the, not that A race, but in a B race. And yeah, just had a really, really good night out. I mean, Athletics New South Wales has done a phenomenal job putting on these track events, especially recently, like given everything that's been happening with the coronavirus and all the
Mm.
restrictions. They've just done a phenomenal job putting on these events. And so that was one of the first races that I'd ever done on a track. Aston, I'd done a lot of park runs, done 5K, just on various park run circuits, but getting out on the track was completely new and almost foreign, and something I hadn't done since I was probably about 12 years old when I was running an 800 meter or something in primary school. And so that was fun. It was exhilarating. Just sort of talked to my coach beforehand, who was giving me some tips about where I needed to be and how I should sort of position myself in the pack, and probably didn't listen. Probably spent way too much time out in lanes 2 and 3 trying to overtake people, but had a great night. And again, I remember it being a really good night. It was a warm night, but otherwise still conditions, and yeah, just went for it, and nearly snuck under 15 minutes, but not quite.
And was that on the same track, the warm-up track out there at Sydney, or?
It was there's two sort of right across the road from each other, adjacent to each other. So one
Right.
is the track. I think that was on the bigger track with the
Yep.
stadium seating in it.
Yep. Okay. All right. 10,000 metres. Again in Sydney. This is October 2020. You've ran 31:00. A nice 10,000 metre time there.
Yeah, I was really happy with that. I've been doing a whole bunch of marathon training all year, kind of trying to stay more or less ready in case something ended up happening. I mean, I know it was a bit of a long shot, and we were month by month, you're just sort of looking at the running calendar, being like, well, maybe Melbourne will go ahead, maybe Sydney, and then you get down to it, and it's like, no, it's going to be postponed. And that was kind of always in the back of my mind, that none of these big marathons were going to go ahead. So I banked quite a bit of fitness, and so I was feeling pretty good. And I'd actually wanted to have a really solid hit at the cross country at New South Wales State Cross Country, and that was a month before. That was in September, and I went out, Aston, and I absolutely bombed that race. Like, cooked myself, didn't finish. Got 7K in and just had to pull the pin, and it was crappy, for lack of a better word. I mean, it was an awful feeling, when you blow up in a race like that. And so I was pretty down on myself after that, but did some self-reflection and didn't waste much time. And then when this 10,000 meter race popped up, I decided I needed to hop back into it. And yeah, there was some great athletes in that race. It was the championship race, so obviously those front runners were out running 29 minutes low, or maybe I think a couple of people snuck, like Ed Goddard, who won, would have snuck under 29 minutes, which is just phenomenal. But out in that 31-minute zone, we had a few good athletes, and I was able to work with some of them, and we sort of pushed each other and paced each other, and yeah, got nearly snuck under 31 minutes. But yeah, I was very pleased with that, because that was a big personal best for me.
Yeah. No, fantastic. So what sort of, I mean, I'm interested to see how you progress with your volume. Obviously, you're surrounded by some other good athletes. You've got yourself a coach, but yeah, what sort of volume were you running? Like, let's just say in 2020, last year, when you were doing these times.
Yeah, so I probably, if I'm looking just at my Garmin Connect, which I did recently, and Strava, I'm nearly up around 6,000 kilometers for the year. I can actually for you if I.
It's about a 120 average. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's probably, and look, it was a little bit variable. If you take it for a race, sometimes it drops a little bit, but yeah, for the most part, it was kind of in that ballpark. 2020, I'm looking at right now, so Strava's telling me that my distance for the year was just over 6,000 kilometers. So
so when you were preparing for the marathon, what were your big weeks?
So
the marathon that might have happened.
Yeah, the marathon that might have happened, which didn't happen. Look, I probably never got into the full scale like build, because my coach and I were just watching and waiting, and so probably kept it pretty consistent around 120. Like, that would have been on the bigger end of some of those bigger weeks for me last year.
Was that
But now,
double runs, or that was just running 7 days a week, or how were you sort of structuring those weeks?
yeah, I hadn't really integrated any doubles yet. I think I did for a little bit, and then I backed off the doubles because I was dealing with a little bit of just shin issues, like a bit of bone
Yeah,
stress on the shin. So I backed those off. And yeah, it was just kind of running 7 days a week with the occasional rest day in there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Probably I did drop down because I was doing basically 3 sessions. Like I'd be doing a Tuesday session, Thursday session, and then I'd sometimes get out and run park run almost like a session. Like I'd sort of race it a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
Um, and then park run stopped, so I sort of dropped down to the 2 sessions, and I'd be doing a Tuesday, Friday session,
yeah,
and then just hitting those big long Sunday runs.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that
yeah,
was kind of how I built it up. But I'm now
yeah.
starting to integrate doubles a little bit more, and just in the last couple of weeks, I'm trying to get my volume up a little bit because yeah, the goal is to run a marathon early this year. Canberra might be the one that I target.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We'll chat about that soon, Miles. I'll just move on to your marathon. So that was down there in Melbourne, and actually a half marathon. I think I might have done this race. Um, so September 2019 in Sydney, you ran in 68:45. Was that out at Homebush?
no, so that was the Blackmore's half. So yeah, I didn't.
Ah, gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that one that you ran out at Homebush, that looked like a really quick race, and yeah, I would have loved to have hopped into that one. It was sort of it fell between City to Surf and Blackmore's, and I
It
think
was
there was
always, yeah, it was, yeah, that's right. And I did the Blackmores Marathon. I was a bit worried it would be a bit close, but it actually worked out quite well. But okay, so 68:45 in the Blackmores, yeah, that's a pretty good run. I mean, what sort of time were you hoping to run for the half?
look, I was really pleased with that. I wanted to sneak under 70 minutes for the half. I thought I had a good chance of doing it earlier in the year at the Sydney Morning Herald one, the one that they
Yeah,
have in May, which starts and finishes in Hyde Park, which is another great event. But I was a bit sick that day. Like I woke up and I just felt rubbish. I was a bit under the weather, and things didn't
yeah,
come together on that day. And so yeah, I really wanted to have a solid hit out at the half. And yeah, I remember it just being a great run. Like I think I was sort of in that lead, not quite in the lead pack to begin with, because there were a few guys who went out from memory. I think Tom DeCanto won that race, and I think he had a couple of Japanese guys who were pushing him right to the end, and Matt Cox was up there in the standings as well. So I wasn't with that sort of lead pack, but I remember I went out with Vlad Shatrov, great Newcastle based runner, and yeah, we sort of ran together for the first 5K, and then yeah, I just sort of was able to sustain that pace. And look, I ran a lot of the race solo actually, and then caught a Japanese guy with probably maybe three Ks to go, and I tried to sort of help him along, but I don't know if he understood what I was saying, but he tried to. We sort of ran that last couple of kilometers. It's a beautiful course. You're coming around through Circular Quay and the Opera House in full view, and the bridge, running under the bridge. It's just incredible. But yeah, I just remember it being a really perfect day. I know the marathon, the marathon, because of the start time, some people are finishing the marathon and it's getting pretty hot, but the half marathon starts nice and early. So it just
mm,
stays cool the
yeah,
whole. And so, yeah, really benefited from that because I quite like running in cooler temperatures. I think that just
sure,
agrees with me a little bit more. It
sure.
might be my Canadian heritage, Aston, but
I
yeah,
think most of us will take a 12-degree day over a 25-degree day. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
But no, just ran strong that day. Felt really good the whole way.
mm,
Um, I think I took on a little bit of fuel. Like I might have carried a gel with me, but yeah, would have taken that on probably later in the race, like 16K. And I'm pretty good about getting water at all the water stations. I usually try to get my water in, but yeah, just had a really great afternoon. Well, a great morning, I
mm,
should say.
mm. So what was your overall position in that race?
Offhand, it was definitely in the top 10. I think I might have
Yeah,
been sixth or seventh in that race. So yeah, I was very happy with
yeah.
that.
Yeah. All right. Marathon, Melbourne 2019, 2:26:47. Now, is that your first marathon? And is that the only marathon that you've done?
No, so it was
Okay.
it's my second marathon. So the very first one I ran was Canberra 2019. So I'd run one earlier in the year,
Right.
um, and I'd run it off very little sort of base or even marathon specific training. I just kind of said to my wife, you know what, I think I'd like to have a crack at running a marathon, and she kind of shrugged and said, yeah, okay. And so without knowing very much about what I was doing, I kind of was just going out and sort of running my 10Ks every day, and probably got up to about probably had 2 or 3 weeks before the Canberra Marathon where I maybe got to 90 kilometers, but otherwise I was sort of just running, 50, 60 kilometer weeks for the 8 weeks before that. And I just wanted to get under 2 hours 40 for that one. I thought that was just a good benchmark, and I did. I just snuck under, so I think I ran 2:39:40 or something on that first attempt.
Okay. Yep.
And I just knew that, again, much like running my first park run event, I was just like, well, this is something that I think I could get a little bit better at. I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
So how did the back end of the marathon go? It was okay? There was no big fade or?
In Canberra, no. I actually, it went well. Have you run the marathon there?
Yes.
So there's a stretch where you're coming, and I don't know if this has always been the case, but there's a stretch where you're coming along Park's Way and you're coming back, and you meet up with all the half marathoners.
Correct.
Of course,
yeah.
the races sort of merge and combine. And so I was coming back along that stretch, and I was feeling a little bit, like I was fading. And then all of a sudden you just surround, like, because I was by myself. I've been running basically on an island for 15 kilometers. And then all of a sudden there's just hundreds of people around you. And luckily there were quite a few people who were sort of running right in the sweet spot. So I just sort of latched onto a few people, and we sort of paced each other. And then, yeah, that was a huge like mental boon at the time, and it really sort of helped me sort of regain some focus. And yeah, so I ended up, I felt pretty rubbish in the last kilometer, but I ended up catching up and overtaking a few people in those last couple K, just because, yeah, everyone was sort of fading pretty hard, and I somehow managed to, just keep going until that finish line.
Yeah, they've only just recently changed that course. So I can't remember if that was the first year of the new course, but it used to be completely different. So we never used to run through the half marathon, because we used to, the first part of the marathon used to be the last part of the marathon. So if anything, it's a little bit faster these days, because there's a bit of a dead section when you get out to Western Park. It's really slightly undulating and really dead road, and can be quite open. And that used to be the last part of the marathon. So a lot of people used to suffer out there. So now we get that out of the way in the first 10 or 12K. And then it's a little bit faster at the finish. So the new course is a little bit faster, except for the fact that, you got to run through those half marathons. And I was the opposite. I was having a bad day. And when I got to those half marathons, it's a bit strange, because you sort of lose an idea of what pace you're running, because generally you're running through the backpackers, and then they're running a little bit slower. So you sort of lose, that perception of how you're actually running, if that makes sense, because you tend to be running through them.
I was really lucky. I mean, I just, because it could have been exactly that, right? They could have been going slower, and I would have been, ducking and weaving, and that would have slowed me down. Maybe they were just, but it just, so I looked at my watch and I was like, my pace is dead on. And so I just managed to sort of sneak in right at that sweet spot, which was just, dumb luck.
All right. So that was Canberra. So you ran 2:39. Most of us will take that as a debut marathon time, mate. So you obviously knew that off 50, 60 Ks a week average, you had a bit of a chance to improve on that. So back down to Melbourne so Melbourne's October. You ran your 2:26:47. So what did you do in training between April and October?
So didn't change a whole lot. Obviously started to run a little bit more in terms of volume, started to actually read up on, what marathon training actually looked like, and look back at what I'd done before Canberra, and sort of said, oh, I wasn't really training like I should have been for a marathon. And so first things first, just started to up that volume a little bit. Started to work with a coach as well. So that was sort of when I signed on with Barry Keem, who's a local coach here in Wollongong. And that's been a really good relationship. But yeah, he sort of got me doing a little bit more marathon specific stuff, and also just integrating like fartlek training in a bigger way, and doing intervals, because like really before, like I was just going out and I'd just hammer a 10K run, and there wouldn't be much variation in my pace at all. Aston, I'd just kind of be, it was either, be jogging the 10K, or I'd just be doing a hard run, sort of, and the same route every time, and the same sort of distance every time. That was kind of just what I did for my weekly exercise. But as soon as I started working with Barry, I was getting a little bit more variation just in the program, and that kept it interesting as well, right? You start doing workouts, and you give yourself a benchmark, and you're trying to improve on those workouts, and just mixing it up a little bit, and then integrating also just recovery, long recovery runs as well. So that was really important, just sort of, build a base, I guess, and to just sort of start seeing and understanding what training for a marathon really looked like. So that was key. And then also I just raced as well. I mean, I really love racing. So I raced the City to Surf in early August and had a great time there. I sort of snuck into the top 10 in the City to Surf. I think I ran 44 minutes somewhere, 44 minutes high.
Nice. Yeah.
Then I had that Blackmore's run, so I had a great half marathon before, just a month out from that Melbourne Marathon. So that was a really good confidence booster.
Yeah.
And then did a little road trip with my wife down to Melbourne, and ran in Melbourne. I had a couple of good mates who were down there running as well, so that was nice. We had a couple little pack from Wollongong, and we were there to motivate each other, and we did some training in the lead up. So it was nice to sort of have a little group down there. Makes the whole race experience enjoyable. And just had a great day. There was some strong runners in the pack that I was in. We did a lot of working together. Shared a couple drink bottles at times when we missed them, and then ran 30K basically with a really great pack. And then that last 12, it was just kind of go time, and just tried to hold on and finish strong.
Fantastic. How was the body absorbing the training leading into the marathon? As far as little niggles, you would have upped the volume. Like when you did that, was the body absorbing it pretty well? Was there any sort of little humps along the way, little learnings that you took on?
Yeah, little things. I mean, I've mentioned that I've had sort of a bit of bone stress on the shin, so that's something that kind of has recurred a little bit. I tend to get a bit of a recurring sort of soreness in my soleus, which is just sort of like in the back lower part of the calf, I guess, and one leg. There's little things that sort of rear up and rear their head every now and then, but nothing that's kind of been like sort of debilitating. I remember, and nothing that's really forced me to take any considerable time off, which is really fantastic. I've been quite lucky and I suppose durable in that regard. I remember feeling quite tired in the lead up to Melbourne, like feeling like I'm sort of feeling close to being overdone here, and I remember was sort of entering that taper, and the coach had a 10K sort of tempo on the program, which was probably the last sort of hard workout that I did before the race. And look, I went out and I ran it and I nailed it. But it just felt hard. Like I just felt completely sapped afterwards. And it was just this moment where I didn't know whether I should be confident or whether I should be concerned. But in the end, looking back now, I think that's just how you're kind of meant to feel. Like you're meant to feel that your body is tired, and that's what that taper is for. It's to help you sort of rest and make sure that the muscles and the body are ready to go on race day.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a bit of a learning thing for everyone, isn't it? To find out what's normal and what isn't. And I think as the years go on, you get better at filtering out that, and like you said, just saying that's just the body absorbing all the training, and the rest. The rest is what's going to make me stronger and get fitter. I mean, the hard work is doing all the training and all the hard sessions, and that's breaking down the body. But as you know, you get fitter in good nick when you actually rest and take that right recovery. But it's always you always doubt yourself. You always second guess. Should I be doing more or shouldn't? As the years go on, you get better at believing in the training and knowing that the result will come on the day, and not getting too anxious and hung up about it, because you can really get yourself in a bit of a mess if you start doing that. But like I said, I think that comes with time, and I think that's the art of running and running for many, many years, that you actually start to learn those skills. But it sounds like you're picking up pretty quick, and it sounds like you got some good people around you down there helping you out. So that's fantastic. What about with your nutrition? Some people, when they start, doing their marathon training, I mean, you can pretty much run a half marathon on nothing. But when you start running the full distance, you really got to start thinking about taking in some sugars or even hydration. How did you go with that? Did you have any stomach issues? Were you practicing what you're going to do on race day in training?
Yeah, look, I tend to carry a gel with me on most long runs, and look, sometimes I don't need them on a long run if I'm not really sort of gaining it or pushing it too hard, but I'll try to take one anyway. Just practice taking it just whilst running as well. Just get the feel for that, and I'm pretty okay. I mean, I've obviously had my moments where had to do a dash to a toilet, but my gut's pretty pretty okay, and it's never been an issue in a race, thankfully. So in terms of nutrition, it's mostly gels and then maybe hydrolyte as well. Luckily, like both Canberra and Melbourne, I was lucky in the sense that I was able to have put drinks out beforehand, and I'd usually have a little gel taped to the bottle so I could take it if I need it, and that was pretty good. Look, in a half, yeah, like you said, you can usually get through a half without a gel. I might carry one, and I think I remember taking one in during the Blackmores, just kilometer 16, and it's as much probably a placebo as anything, but you just get a little bit of sugar, and maybe that gives you a little perk up. But yeah, nothing too crazy. It's mostly just gels and fluids.
All right, let's talk about the new venture with your goal of running a 220, which you're also documenting online. So we'll talk about how you're going to go about doing that, what you're going to be doing in training to allow that to happen. You mentioned possibly looking at doing the Canberra Marathon. Let's start with with the online, let's call it a blog, but you can fix that up, allowing other people to follow along on the journey. I have read the articles that you've done on RunCreature, and you're actually very skillful at writing, so it's fantastic that you're doing that. And also joining the team with the other people who are sharing all these incredible stories of athletes and what it takes to become elite. So let's talk about you running a sub 220.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, RunCreature, I mean, it's kind of twofold. I guess you can call it a blog or a magazine. There's kind of a magazine element where I'm writing sort of magazine style features about athletes, but there's also a blog component where I'm sort of detailing my running journey as well, and sort of trying to help readers if they want to come along on this journey and sort of see what the training looks like for someone who's sort of in preparing for a marathon and trying to run one, I guess in this sort of ballpark, what it looks like to sort of attempt to run a 220 marathon. So yeah, in terms of that as a goal, I mean, it's a nice round number, I suppose. And I've run 226, and I would like to, I guess, just try and steadily chip away at that time and see if we can't keep improving and maybe maybe just pull it off. It seems like an ambitious target, especially for someone who's only got 2 marathons under their belt. I was really hoping that I would have been able to run 2 more in 2020 and just sort of get those extra reps in, because it's a big undertaking, and there are a lot of variables in a marathon, as Aston. Like sometimes things just don't go to plan, and you only get so many cracks in a calendar year. So look, I'm well aware that it's kind of this ambitious plan, but like you said, all you can do is sort of train for it and then try and trust the training and go out and do your best on the day. So 220, that's basically running a pace of about 3 minutes and 19 seconds or 18 seconds if you want to err on the side of caution, for 42.2 kilometers. I've sort of, I think I'm sort of at a point where I'm approaching being able to do that. Yeah.
So if at this stage, obviously there's a few of us training for Canberra in April. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. Possibly a backup of Gold Coast in July. Then you got Sydney in September. But are you at the moment just thinking, okay, Canberra's going ahead. This is my whatever weeks it is out, and I'm training as if Canberra's going to go?
At the moment, that's my mentality. I sat down with my coach around Christmas time, and we sort of looked at the calendar, and I think we both agreed that Gold Coast is probably the faster course. It's probably the deeper race, just if we're looking at sort of historically speaking. But then my counter to that is that I've sort of been maintaining this level of fitness for quite some time, and I think it's just the idea of trying to maintain just sort of endlessly, or at least for another 6 months, it was just sort of looking like that was just too much, and I kind of wanted to have a race before that. Logistically, Canberra's an easier race for me to get to. We've got family in town. Like it's quite an easy sort of thing to do quickly if we need to. Like if I need to sort of say, oh well, race a marathon, we can get accommodation there. We can travel down there quite quickly. So logistically, it's very very sort of easy for me to race there. I've done the course before. I'm familiar with it. Hopefully, it hasn't changed too much. I know it's sort of under new new management, the event. But yeah, hopefully they keep that course relatively similar to the one that I know anyway. And yeah, that's kind of the mentality. I mean, look, I'm still sort of got Gold Coast swimming around sort of in the back of my mind, maybe get up there for a half marathon if I run the Canberra full. And then, if things progress and go ahead later in the year, Sydney or Melbourne as well. But yeah, I think at this stage, I'm looking at Canberra as the first marathon of the year that I'd love to run.
Yeah, and if it didn't, you would head up to the Gold Coast?
Yeah. Look, if for whatever reason it didn't go ahead, then
Yeah.
that fallback is probably going to be the Gold Coast for
Yeah.
sure. And you reassess, you look at what you've done in training, and you can just sort of either maintain or take a rest if needed, and then build back up again.
Yeah. So how many weeks out of Canberra are we now?
What are we? Maybe 13 weeks out now. It's April 11. So
yeah. So when did you start your training block? Like in the new year, or?
Yeah, pretty much started Jan 4. I had quite a few sort of track races just at the end of 2020, and they all went well. And then sort of coming into December, I just found that I was like getting pretty tired. Like in my workouts, it was getting hot. It was summer. Just wasn't hitting my sessions very well. And so I spoke to the coach, and we kind of both agreed I probably needed just a couple of weeks where I was running easy. And so, yeah, over Christmas and over the holiday sort of period, just sort of backed off the speed stuff. Still kept the volume relatively high, but just wasn't doing any speed sessions. And then we kind of just arbitrarily said from Jan 4th, that'll be the start of the marathon build. And mentally, it's been kind of helpful. It was like, okay, I can just sort of ease off a bit. And it's now given me kind of this sort of added motivation. When Jan 4 sort of hit, I was looking at the program. I was like, all right, ready to go again. So, So yeah, a couple weeks in, ran about 140 kilometers in that first week. Probably be about 135 this week with a race tonight. Yep. So so far so good.
You won't look at trying to run much bigger than that in the weeks before April?
I think I'll be starting to build it up. Yeah, probably maybe get up to as much as 150, but I don't think I'll be going too much more than that. I think, I've proven, I guess, that I can sort of run a relatively good marathon off less than that. I think we'll sort of see how we travel in Canberra off sort of averaging those 150k weeks, and hopefully that bodes well.
Now let's talk about RunCreature. When did that start, and what? I mean, obviously you mentioned before with your work you're in the media. Did you? Yeah, let's just start. First of all, the purpose of why you wanted to start this up. Is it just something that you felt you wanted to do personally, or you felt it was something else that needed to be added to what was out there, or?
Yeah, well, a little bit of the backstory. I was teaching, and I was happily teaching, but I sort of had this moment with my wife. I was like, you know what? I love writing. I miss writing. When I worked as a journalist, I sort of somehow ended up in the space where I was writing about science and technology and engineering, which was really fascinating and really interesting, but it kind of, it wasn't my background or where my expertise lay. And I'd always thought about, writing about sport. I'd always been interested in sport. And I thought, you know what, I'm doing so much running at the moment, and I'm really sort of fallen in love with the sport of athletics and running. It'd be really cool to start writing about athletes and profiling athletes and telling some of their stories. And I sort of looked at what was going on in Australia at the time, and I thought, look, there's some really phenomenal talents that we have here in Australia, and it'd be really, really cool to sort of, just start talking to them and learning about, what they do in training and beyond running as well, like get the human angle, like find out what it is in their lives that they've had to overcome to be successful and things that they've persevered through. So I just got this idea, and that sort of simmered away for a little bit. And then I made a call that's what I was going to focus on. I was going to sort of resume being a freelance writer. And that was back in, I guess, January 2020, way back in January 2020. God, it's not that long ago, but it seems almost a lifetime ago. And the first athlete that I reached out to was a guy most Canberrans would know is Michael Roger, who's a world champion Paralympian. And Michael was about to go over to Houston to run a marathon, and he was the existing world record holder in his Paralympic classification, but he was going to go out and try and set a new world record. And I thought to myself, like, this is a news story. Like, this is a phenomenal world-class athlete who's Canberra based, living in Australia. He's going overseas to set a world record. Like, surely I can write a great yarn about this guy, and I can sell that to a newspaper or whatever, a website here in Australia. And I did that. Like, I talked to Michael. I talked to his coach, Philo Saunders. Wrote a really great piece about his career to date, him going over to the States, him having a crack at this world record, which he set, by the way. And I couldn't sell that story to anyone. I couldn't, I tried to pitch it to the ABC. I tried to pitch it to the Guardian. I tried to pitch it to all these places. And lots of people said, it's really interesting, but like, we just don't, we don't have the budget for it, or it's just not right for us at this time. And it kind of just had it sitting on my computer. And I thought, look, I don't want this to just, die a slow death. So I ended up giving it to the Canberra Times. Like, I said to the editor there, and we were chatting, and I said, look, you just run this in the Saturday paper. Let your readers at least see it. And that was the case. And I mean, a bit of goodwill on my part, but I left that experience thinking, look, it's a pretty crappy state that, we've got these fantastic athletes and we can't get a story published anywhere. There's no market for it. And so, look, that got me thinking. And again, like this was sort of simmering away in the background. I ended up writing a story for Tempo Journal, and their editor, Riley Wolf, was fantastic. I wrote a story on Millie Clark, who's a great female marathoner based in Tassie. And so Tempo's doing fantastic things. I mean, it's a beautiful publication, incredible photography. They do a really, really phenomenal job. But I was kind of wanting to go even that little bit further. I mean, you look at Tempo Journal and what they do, and it's beautifully crafted. But the stories are still relatively short. And I've just come from this background where I wanted to do more long form journalism, writing these really, really in-depth narrative pieces and really drill into the detail. And again, there was just no market for that. And so I thought, well, look, if it doesn't exist, maybe you just have to take a punt and create a space for that yourself, which is effectively what I've done, I guess. So yeah, RunCreature, I guess, was an idea that sort of sprung up in the middle of the year, and I worked with a graphic and web designer to get a site developed, and looking pretty good. I was pretty happy with how it's sort of set up, and the goal is, I guess, to try and keep it going long term, Aston. Hopefully that comes to fruition. I mean, we need to start, I guess, generating a bit of revenue from advertisers and sponsors and the like, but hopefully that comes. But the goal is to basically tell one long form story about an athlete or an inspirational runner in Australia once every month, and have sort of a monthly feature, and then on top of that have some additional sort of content that we're pumping out, and the blog looking at my marathon training. So that's effectively what it is. But yeah, the goal is to sort of to have a space where we're telling great stories about Australian athletes and inspirational runners in our Australian running community.
Yeah, and that's what I sort of picked up on, because I think I read somewhere, maybe you wrote it, or it might have been someone talking about it, but it's more about the story behind the story, rather than just runners telling you their PBs in the next race and the stuff you've heard from other athletes. It's more about trying to get into their minds and into the history behind the runner, and like you said, the bad times, the good times, and the more interesting stories that sometimes we don't hear for whatever reason. And a lot of us say, like, when we're watching races and we watch these runners out the front and you know them by name, but you actually don't know the story, you don't know anything about them. And I think there is a need, and I've spoken about it, and I've heard other people mention it, that we want to hear more about the runners and where they came from, and all those interesting stories that sometimes the runner themselves maybe they're not confident in telling the stories or whatever it might be, but most of us like to hear, from the heart, from what's actually gone on in their lives that's driven them to their success. And so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's sort of where you're trying to go with it, is to try to get those more special stories behind the athlete rather than just the old statistics. Would that be right?
I think so. I think that's definitely a goal, right? I mean, and you can go on to World Athletics and you can look at Liam Adams' PBs, and they're right there for you, but you don't have any context around them, right? Like, you don't know what happened in marathon X that led him to maybe run a little bit slower? Was he dealing with an injury, or something else happened in his life?
Mm.
So there's always, you just miss that context if you're just looking purely at the numbers. And I just think,
Mm.
it's always a story. It doesn't matter who the individual is that you're talking to. I mean, everyone goes through things in their lives, like, big life-changing events. And sometimes it's little things, but they can have a big impact. Like most elite runners would have dealt with injuries at some point in their life. And those can be recurring injuries, or they can just have a big emotional and mental toll on some people as well. And so it's really interesting to sort of just hear people talk about how they manage those hard times. And that's what I found, like in talking to people, you just, you go into an interview and you have your sort of preconceived notions about who an individual is or who an athlete is. And then they'll just completely surprise you, right? Something will come in from completely out of the blue or out of left field, and it'll change the course of the interview, and it'll change the course of the story that you thought you were going to write. And, that's sometimes surprising, but it makes for interesting storytelling as well.
So you will always do face-to-face because there's more chance that those emotions will come out when you are face-to-face rather than over the phone?
I'd love to. I mean, it's been really, really challenging this year, obviously, and sometimes the logistical thing. I mean, the first 4 stories that I've written, none of them have been face-to-face. I've done a couple of Zoom calls so you actually see the individual, but nothing has been in person, which is obviously not my preference. You're exactly right. I mean, when you're sort of sitting down with someone face to face, you can read their emotions, you can read their body language, you can pick up on little details and quirks, and sometimes that's a lot harder to do over the phone. But the reality, I guess, is just that sometimes these athletes are traveling. They're all over the place. They're training. They're going on training camps to different places. They're going to races in different places. So sometimes it's just the case that you have to do it by phone. But moving forward, I mean, obviously, if we're talking to athletes locally and domestically, it'd be awesome to sort of increase the amount of face-to-face time.
Hopefully it's exciting times with being Olympic year. Not too sure what information you have. The last thing I heard was it's definitely going ahead. It's just at what level it's going to go ahead. I would love to see something like we all would, just for the athletes. It would be so hard just, not knowing whether it's going to be on or not. That would be, hard, very hard. So, but it would be exciting at the moment for yourself who want to speak to athletes who are leading into the Olympics. There's so many stories there. I'm hoping that we do have an Olympic qualifier if Athletics Australia puts that on sometime in the year to give people a chance to make the Olympics.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's really, really important, and I hope that Athletics Australia or maybe working in partnership with some of the state athletics can make sure that there is that sort of event where there's a qualifier. And I've sort of tossed around the idea that maybe there should be a marathon trials race. That would be pretty exciting. We've got there's enough athletes who have qualified already, but I think there's some phenomenal athletes who probably haven't had a chance to run a qualifier, just given the state of where we are in the world with the coronavirus and the mass cancellation of all these events. But you look at what happened down in Tasmania and Tom DeCanto running 62 minutes for the half. I mean, it would be pretty awesome to see him get a chance to run a marathon, or a guy like Julian Spence who raced in Doha. It would be cool. But again, I think that would take a lot of coordination from Athletics Australia to put on an event like that.
Hopefully it happens though, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Look, thank you so much. I know you got a race tonight. Was it 3,000 metres you said on the track?
Yeah, 3,000 metres on the track.
Yeah. What time's that kick off?
It's scheduled for about 7:15 tonight. I think they're doing a live stream as well.
Okay.
So it's an Athletics New South Wales event, but happening down here. And it looks it's a bit windy out there at the moment and very sunny, but it's a couple degrees cooler than it has been. So hopefully hopefully we get some nice conditions this evening.
So what's the time you're trying to hit, or are you just out there for a race?
Just out for a race, Aston. Look, I'd love to run something quick. I'd love to sort of get close to that PB that I set back in, I believe, November. So run somewhere around 8:30. But I haven't tapered for this race at all. I've kind of, we're in the marathon build now, and so run it like a session. Try to run it quick, but it's not the focus. It's not the priority. It's just a bit of fun.
And you got someone lined up for RunCreature? You got an interview coming up?
Well, I do, and I can, I guess, tease it. I don't know when this is going to go live, but Dion Finocchiaro, who I know you interviewed previously, and who is just an absolute machine of an athlete in terms of the training that he does. He's just flown to the United States because he's about to take part in Hoka 11's Project Carbon X2, which is I guess a 100-kilometer race that they're holding to, I guess, coincide with the launch of their new super shoe. So all the athletes are Hoka athletes, and they're going to be wearing this new shoe. And Dion's the only Australian, and he's over there. They've flown him over there. He's in a hotel bubble near Phoenix in Arizona. And next Saturday, I guess it'll be Sunday, 1 a.m. our time, he's going to have a crack at the 100K Australian record, and he's going to have a pacemaker going out with him. So that's pretty exciting in terms of what's coming up. And so we did a nice long chat with Dion just a few days ago. That's going to be going up this week.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I saw on his Instagram, yeah, it's over there. I think it was -2, but he was loving the break from the Australian summer.
Everyone thinks Arizona and thinks it's, beautiful, sunny and hot, but I guess in January you can get some crisp, cool mornings there. So he's got to put the gloves and the balaclava on for those morning runs, but hopefully when they get out on the race on that fast track that they're running on, it'll be nice conditions.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Yeah, no, Dion's a great bloke, and yeah, he's really looking forward to see how that goes, because Camille Heron is involved, and is Jim Walmsley, is he involved in that as well? Or?
Yeah, Jim Walmsley. So there's a few from what the press statements say from Hoka. There's a few athletes who are going to be going out sub 6 hour pace, which is just mind boggling. But Jim Walmsley.
So Dion's going to try and break the 100K Aussie record, but what are the other athletes? Are they are they chasing records as well? Or?
Yeah. So it's being billed as a world record attempt across the board, I guess. So they've got, I think, 40 athletes all up, men and women, who are going to be running in these events. So the main one's happening in Phoenix at an 11-kilometer loop track in Phoenix, undisclosed location. So the men are going out trying to break the world record, which I believe is 6 hours and 9 minutes. Give or take, and the women's record is about 6 hours 33 minutes. So those front runners in both the men's and women's races are going to be going out trying to get under basically 6 hours for the men and under 6 hours 30 for the women. And Dion's going to be running with a pacemaker who's trying to get him the Australian record, running at 6 hours 27 minute pace. So
who holds that Aussie record?
You're testing me here. I believe his name is Tim Sloan.
And that was set a while ago, or?
I believe it was set in 1995.
Okay.
Maybe fact check me on that one. But So either way, I mean, if he pulls it off, amazing. I mean, he had a huge run back in November. He did that lockdown 50K challenge, and he set the Australian 50K record, which was pretty huge. So I think he's in pretty good shape. I mean, it's a tight turnaround to come off a 50K record and then to run 100K. But look, he's a guy who loves to run and loves to race. He pushes his body to extremes. So if anyone can do it, he might be the man. So hopefully he has a good race on the day.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously, COVID restrictions over there, there must have been a little bubble, that's for sure.
Well, I spoke to him about that. I mean, he was quite concerned initially about going. Obviously, with what's happening in the United States, it's pretty dire in terms of what's happening in COVID. And I think Arizona in particular isn't doing very well. But they're sort of amazingly he's not in a forced quarantine. Like he doesn't have to quarantine, but I think he's sort of self-imposed quarantine, and they're staying in a hotel bubble. There's no other guests. It's just the athletes. So Hoka's obviously sort of taken care of all the logistics. So fingers crossed he can have a great race and also stay COVID free and stay safe.
All right, Myles, thank you so much. Look, really looking forward to your personal journey, that sub 220. Hopefully I'll see how I'm towing the line at Canberra in April. Otherwise, maybe up there on the Gold Coast. But all the best with it all, mate. Hopefully the body just continues to absorb. I reckon you're looking pretty good for that sub 220, mate. And best of luck with RunCreature. Now, I'm going to put some links in the show description below over to your Instagram page, over to your website. Now, just for people that are listening, would it just be runcreature.com.au or?
Yeah, no .au. It's just runcreature.com.
Okay, runcreature.com. And you've got your Instagram page. Is there anything else there? You got a Strava link? Do you mind people follow you along there?
Yeah. People you can follow me on Strava, but all the links are on RunCreature.com. It's sort of just you scroll down to the bottom and we've got all the links
All of
there
the
as well.
social links down the bottom. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And it's just a free subscription, isn't it?
Yeah, at the moment it's completely free. I mean, we're hoping to keep it that way.
Yep.
At some point down the track, we might look at doing something like a Patreon subscription where
Sure.
we can pay, and we'll sort of have to figure out what that bonus content and what the value add will be. But
Yep.
we think we think the articles there's value in them.
Yeah, no, I've certainly read through them, and I certainly recommend to all the listeners to jump over and have a look and read and subscribe, so you get the next article that comes out. It's awesome that you're doing that. The more people that keep adding these articles and this information resources over to the running community, all the better. And obviously, you're very skillful at doing it. It's very easy reading, so well done there, mate. All the best tonight, mate. Hopefully you get out there and get close to that 8:32 PB. But if not, like you said, you're in the marathon mode, so be it. But I find, and you'll probably find a lot of runners find, when they're in marathon mode, just the strength they get from that extra volume, you tend to still run pretty quick. So you never know, mate. All the best.
I hope that's the case. Look, Aston, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it, mate. It was great to be on the podcast with you. And thank you again for all the support and the opportunity to have a chat.
Not a problem, Myles. My pleasure, mate. And we'll see each other soon, I reckon.
Yeah, that would be good. Definitely. Looking forward to Canberra. Fingers crossed it goes ahead. And we'll catch up then.
All right, mate. Thanks again.
Cool. Thanks, Aston.
All right. Cheers, Myles.